everybody, Matt from Nerd Knights Painting coming at you with another Lord of the Rings Journey in Middle-earth miniature of Bilbo Baggins. Well, we're going to be turning this ugly gray, well, now primed with zenithal highlighting, miniature into this beautiful looking little mini. If this is your first time at the channel, why don't you hit that subscribe button? Doesn't hurt. Don't miss anything. We're going to be doing some more Lord of the Rings, and then we're going to be doing a bunch of games coming up. Bloodborne, Madara, a whole bunch of stuff. So hit that subscribe button for me. And, all right, let's go. First color we're going to be using is a little Bugman's Glow. Now, if you're wondering how I got the highlighting the way it was, I did a black undercoat, and then I sprayed it on top with a white coat. That's zenithal highlighting. I have a priming miniatures video. It's one of the first ones I did, so if you want to check that out, I'll put that in the comments below. But we're going to be hitting all the skin parts with Bugman's Glow. Make sure you're thinning your paints. I use a wet palette, so make sure you're thinning your paints properly. Do not ever take it out of the pot. We're going to be hitting the sword and eventually the buttons here in a second with a little Grey Knight's Steel. For the bottom portion of the sword, or the hilt, we're going to be using Iron Warriors, which is a darker black and silver. If you don't have that, just mix a little black in with some silver and you'll get that. For the cape, we're going to be using a little Flat Earth from Vallejo. If you do not have this color, go with something similar to that from the Citadel paint line or whatever paint you're using. If you have Citadel, try something like an XV88 or something very earthy looking. For the vest, we're going to be using Death Corps Drab. If you don't have this color, again, use a Wog Flesh or something similar. For the undershirt, we're going to be using Karak Stone. And if we mess up at any point along the way, it's not a big deal. We can go back it over with the color we just used. For the pants, we're going to be using a little Baneblade Brown. Now you kind of notice that a lot of these characters are going to have very earthy colors. So very browns, greens, light browns. And that's predominantly what we're going to use for a lot of these miniatures. For the hair on top of his head and on his feet, of course, because he is a hobbit, we're going to be using a little Rhinox Hide. Again, if you spill some onto his feet, just go back over it after it dries with some Bugman's Glow and just clean it up a little bit. For the pendant that is holding his cloak together, we're going to be using a little Retributor Armour. And again, we're going to use Grey Knight's Steel for the buttons on his vest. And for the mythical blue on his sword, for all you Lord of the Rings fans. I don't remember where this portion came from, the sword. Maybe leave a comment below and tell me where it came from. But we're going to be using Baharroth Blue, which is an edge highlight. Now that the base colors are done, we're going to be using our shades. I predominantly use shades from Citadel, as I've tried some other ones, and Citadel really makes a great shading project. So we're going to be using Reikland Fleshshade on all of our flesh tone. And if you get some onto the hair on the feet or the hair on top of the head, it doesn't matter. You're not going to notice a difference. We're going to go over here in a second with a different color. For the entire rest of the miniature, we're going to keep it easy. Well, we do have one more shade for the vest, but you could use this if you wanted. We're going to use Agrax Earthshade. For the vest, we're going to use Athnian Camoshade here in a second. And like I just said, we're going to be using Athnian Camoshade for the vest, but you don't need to do this. It's just going to give it that nicer green highlight, that camo looking highlight, hence Camoshade. And for our silver pieces, as I forgot, obviously, we're going to be using Nulin Oil, because silver and Nulin Oil is like peanut butter and jelly. And we're already cruising through this miniature. We're going to be using Bugman's Glow, just a reapplication of Bugman's Glow on the flesh. And while we're doing this, you want to hit the top of the nose, the forehead, the cheeks, the ears, and just the chin. We want to create that contrast of sun hitting from above or at a high angle. So we're going to use our highlights sparingly. You want to cover the entire miniature again. For the feet, you want to hit the knuckles on the toes and the back portion of the heel leading up to the front of the foot. And we're going to create a tone variant between everything we've used so far. Before we go any further with our highlights, we're going to be using Abaddon Black, and we're just going to put in a small slit on each eye, and then we're going to cover it in white here in just a second. And as you noticed, I have switched to a smaller brush here to make it easier. It's size 10-0 brush. Now very gently, we're going to be using some Corrax White, and we're just going to not blot out that entire black portion we put on. We're just going to put a little slit. This miniature has a little bit of a raised area, so just try and hit that raised area on the eye. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a contrast from a black and white. Now retake some of that Abaddon Black and just blot in a little pupil on the eye. If you mess up, just go back over it with a little bit of white and redo it. Continuing with the highlights, we're going to do a 1-to-1 mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Fleshtone. So take one brushful of Bugman's Glow and one brushful of Cadian Fleshtone and mix it together, either in your well or wet palette like I use. And we're going to do what we were doing with the Bugman's Glow before. And you're going to hit the bridge of the nose, the chin, the cheekbones, the forehead, the ears. We're going to use it on most of the hands, the knuckles on the feet, and the back side of the heel. And every time we're going to use a different tone, we're going to use less and less and less. That's going to create that tone variation. Now we're going to use some Cadian Fleshtone, pure Cadian Fleshtone, and again we're going to be doing it just a little bit less than what we did before. Again, the same spots we've already done. Now we want to start kind of hitting the knuckles as well on the hands and the knuckles on top of the feet, and we're just hitting them and we're creating that little tone variation. Again, if this is your first time here and you like what you see so far, hit that subscribe button while you're painting. So do it real quick, doesn't hurt. Now we're going to do a 1-to-1 mix of Cadian Fleshtone, Kislev Flesh, same thing. One brush full of Cadian Fleshtone, one brush full of Kislev Flesh, and we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it just a little bit less on the bridge of the nose, the forehead, the cheekbones, and the chin. And as you can already see, there is a good tone variation that we've created, a very good contrast that you can see the dark versus light. And for an optional step, you don't have to, we're using a little Kislev Flesh. We're just going to use this on the bridge of the nose, just a little bit on the cheeks, and we're going to be hitting the knuckles on the hand and on top of the feet. This just gives a subtle, very kind of bright looking tone variation. We're going to go back over our cloak with a little flat earth, and all we're going to be using on this is just the raised portions of the cloak. For a highlight on our cloak, we're going to be using 3 brushfuls of flat earth to 1 brushful of Ushabti Bone. That's going to give you a lighter, obviously brown. And we're just going to use it on the raised portions on top of the cloak. Moving to the vest, we're going to do a reapplication of Death Corps Drab. Don't do the entire vest. Leave some of that shade in there. So just hit, for the most part, the raised areas and the wrinkles that are on the, if you're looking at it, the left side of the miniature. We're going to do a 50-50 mix of Death Corps Drab and Loren Forest, so 1 brushful of each. And we're going to start hitting the highlighted portions of the vest. Now we're just going to use some pure Loren Forest, and we're going to be hitting the wrinkles on, if you're looking at it again, the left side of the vest, and a little bit on the right hand side. So just follow what I'm doing and use it sparingly, because it is a little bit of a brighter tone that we were just using with the Death Corps Drab. For the hair, we're going to be using 3 brushfuls of Rhinox Hide to 1 brushful of Zandri Dust, And we're just going to give it a little bit of a highlight in the hair on top of the head and the hair that is on top of his foot. We could have done this beforehand and just done a pure Zandri Dust and highlights and then washed it, which you still can do if you want to, but we're just going to give it a little bit of a tone variation. We're not going to do it nothing crazy because Bilbo has pretty dark hair. We're going to do a reapplication of Baneblade Brown on our pants. And if you have Instagram, why don't you go check out our Instagram? It's nerd.knights. I will link the Instagram in the comments below if you want to go check it out and follow us and see what we're doing. To give it another subtle highlight, we're going to do 2-to-1, 2 Baneblade Brown to 1 Ushabti Bone. And we're going to give it a little bit of a tone variation to give it a little bit of a lighter look. As the pants, especially the front of the pants, and if you're looking at the left leg, specifically the left knee, would have a little bit more of a lighter tone on it. We're going to do a little Karak Stone highlight on our undershirt, and you do not want to hit any of those recesses, just hit the raised areas, and it's just going to be a very little subtle highlight. For the metal portions, we're going to do a little Runefang Steel. So you're going to hit that blade, and then you're going to hit the metal pieces on the vest. And as you can kind of tell, it's a very kind of dull looking miniature as far as colors and bright colors. We want our focal points to be the skin and the highlights of the skin, so that's the part we're going to take the most time on. For the base, we're going to use a little Stirland Mud. I put a little Agrax Earth on the front of it to start it out, but I'm going to put a tuft over it here in a second, so it's kind of going to get washed out. So you can just do Stirland Mud if you want, which I did. Once that is completely dry, we're going to use a little Tyrant Skull, which is a dry paint from Citadel. And I'm using my dry brush that I ordered off of Kickstarter, Ghost Dry Brushes. I think he's going to be doing one coming up here pretty quick. I'm not sponsored by him, but he does make a good product, so I would go check it out. We're now going to tone it down with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. That's going to blend in all the colors, going to make it look real nice. And we're going to super glue in a little dead tuft on top of that Agrax Earth I put on there before to kind of make it look a little nasty. Now we're going to paint the rim of the base, and I'm just using Abaddon Black, but if you wanted to use an XV88 or a brown, you can do that too. And that's it. It actually looks pretty good. I think it turned out very well. It's not a long process. I hope it helped. I hope this video and your miniature turned out as good as this one did. And I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch this. Hope you learned something, and thank you so much for watching. I can't thank you enough. If you have friends who are beginning painters and want to learn a couple things and just got this game, send them this video. I'd appreciate it. Well, that's it. I'll have another video next week, and paint on.